والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Inshallah, to continue with our Journey of the Heart series, we're going through the book of Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, Ad-Da' wad-Dawa, the sickness and its cure. And last week we went over who Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah was and his level of scholarship and where he was from and why he wrote this book. We went over the question that the person asked Ibn Qayyim, complaining about his sin and how to cure himself of that sin. We went over the different hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that Allah hasn't sent down a sickness except that he sent with it its cure. And we know that everything has a cure for it except one thing we mentioned. What is that? Old age or death. So the next chapter we're starting, or the next section, is Du'a ul-'ay as-su'al, that the cure for the ignorance is a question. قال ابن قيم الجوزي رحمه الله: وهذا يعم أدواء القلب والروح والبدن وأدواتها، وقد جعل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الجهل الداء وجعل دواءه سؤال العلماء. So Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he says that the question is as a cure for the ignorance, and that covers everything basically. So he said that covers the heart, the soul, the body, and all that's related to it. So if you're sick, for example, you go to a doctor that's specialized to ask him how to cure that sickness. That's for the bodily sickness. And for the deen, you go to the scholars to ask them if you don't know an answer. And that helps to save you from ignorance. So Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he reports a hadith to demonstrate this, the importance of knowledge and asking those of knowledge. فروى أبو داود في سننه من حديث جابر بن عبد الله قال: خرجنا في سفر فأصاب رجلا منا حجر فشج في رأسه ثم احتلم فسأل أصحابه فقال: هل تجدون لي رخصة في التيمم؟ قالوا: ما نجد لك رخصة وأنت تقدر على الماء. فاغتسل فمات. فلما قدمنا على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبر بذلك أو أخبر بذلك فقال: قتلوه فقتلهم الله. ألا سألوه إذا لم يعلموا فإنما شفاء العي السؤال، إنما كان يكفيه أن يتيمم ويعصر أو يعصب على جرحه خرقة ثم يمسح عليها ويغتسل سائر جسده. So in his hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he was saying, or the narration says, a summarized version of it, that some people, they were out in travel, and one of the persons, he got an injury in the head, a deep cut in the head. And he asked the people with him, the companions, saying, is it okay for him to make tayammum? And they said no, because if you can have water present, then you can't make tayammum. And that's a general rule of fiqh, right? So he made ghusl. He had ihtilam, which is like a wet dream. He woke up, he had a wet dream, so he had to make ghusl. So he washed himself and he ended up dying from that. It could have been from the cold or from the infection of the wound. Whatever the case, he ended up dying. Then they went back to the Prophet ﷺ, coming back from the journey, and they said to the Prophet ﷺ what happened. And he was very upset. And he said, قَتَلُوهُ قَاتِلَهُمُ اللَّهِ. They killed him, may Allah kill them. And some scholars in the Sharh, they explain it's just a form of expression, anger. He doesn't literally mean may Allah kill them because the dua of the Prophet ﷺ is accepted, but he was upset to that level because they gave a fatwa or an answer about something they had no knowledge of or no proper understanding of or not the ability to give that fatwa. And it caused this man his life. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, shouldn't they have asked those that know? For verily the cure of ignorance is the question. It could have been sufficient for him to make tayammum and wrap up the wound. So in general, when you have a wound in the Sharia of Islam, you can cover it and wipe over it. And anything like it says, the Qaida al-Fiqhiyya in Islam, ad-dararar yuzal, hardship is taken away. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made the deen easy for us. There's not something that's too hard for us to do. If we're sick, we can pray in easier ways. If washing with water can infect the wound or make you have greater harm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made tayammum permissible, right? So this hadith, this story demonstrates the importance of knowledge, the importance of asking those who are knowledgeable, and be careful who you take your deen from or who you ask your questions to. And it shows the danger of answering questions without knowledge. So inshallah, just to give some of the ayat and hadith and stories of the Salaf about this subject, I thought it's important because nowadays we have like Facebook fatwas, and mashallah, anybody reads something, he gives a fatwa, no problem. He's asked a question, he wants everybody to ask him a question, and he answers with ease, no problem. But this is something that the scholars of Islam, they were very scared to answer any fatwa. And us, more so, we should be even more scared, how far we are from the knowledge. So first, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in Surah Yusuf, إِنَّ الْحُكْمَ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ, that verily legislation is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, when you speak about the deen, if you say halal or haram, that's a form of legislation. And no one has that right except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah is affirming in Surah Yusuf that it's His right to legislate, right? Not our right. So when you say something of halal or haram, be 100% sure it's from the book of Allah or the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And this ayah came in the context, لا تعبدون من دون الله إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن الحكم إلا لله أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. So do not worship besides Him those things that they're just names that your father has coined, for which Allah has not sent down any authority. Sovereignty, legislation belongs only to Allah. He has commanded you to worship none except Him. That is upright religion, but most people know not. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about Tawheed here, and He's putting part of Tawheed, the legislation of saying something is haram or something is halal. In another ayah in Surah Al-A'raf 33, قُلْ إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ رَبِّي الْفَوَاحِشَ مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَنَ وَالْإِثْمَ وَالْبَغْيِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ وَأَن تُشْرِكُوا بِاللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يَنَزِّلْ بِهِ سُلْطَانًا وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That say, my Lord has forbidden the indecencies, the outward among them and the inward, and sin and undue aggression, and that you should ascribe to Allah partners for which He has not sent down any authority, and that you should attribute to Allah what you do not know, or that you should say upon Allah that which you do not know. And some scholars say this is the order of the danger. Like He starts with the sins, the minor, the major, the outward, the open, and then He talks about, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about shirk, associating partners with Allah, and then right after that speaking about Allah without authority. So He's putting it up there with shirk. And it is a form of shirk if you try to say a hukum in Islam that doesn't have no proof from the Quran or Sunnah. So it's very dangerous to speak without knowledge. And there's many other ayat, we'll go through a couple more. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَا تَصِفُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ الْكَذِبَ هَذَا حَلَالٌ وَهَذَا حَرَامٌ لِتَفْتَرُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَفْتَرُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ لَا يُفْلِحُونَ. And don't say with your tongues, asserting falsely with your tongues that this is lawful, halal, and this is unlawful, haram, to fabricate lies against Allah. Indeed, those who fabricate lies against Allah will not be successful. In Surah Al-An'am, ayah 144, فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ افترى على الله كذبا ليضل الناس بغير علم إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. And who is more unjust to misguide the people, or to say false things to misguide the people without knowledge? Verily, Allah does not guide the wrongdoers. So this is Allah calling one of the greatest sins, to say something that will misguide others without knowledge. When you speak without knowledge, you can misguide a person. Like in this hadith we're going through, they spoke without knowledge and they ended up having that person losing his life. It's a very serious affair. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, ayat 36, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Do not follow that of which you have no knowledge. Indeed, the hearing, the sight, and the heart, all of these will be accountable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, be very careful what you say. Because everything that comes out your mouth, everything that you see in your eyes, and everything that's in your heart, you're going to be held accountable for. Does anybody know what one of the most, we could say, mutawatir hadith is? Mutawatir is the highest grade of hadith. So some scholars say that in each, there's a chain of narration. You have like the first ones that heard it from the Prophet ﷺ, then the next generation, and the next generation, and so on. So they say mutawatir yastahilu tawati'ihim ala al-kadhib. It's something that is impossible for all of them to agree upon a lie. Like it's impossible. So in each level there's probably like 10, 20, 30, 40 narrators. And then the next level the same thing, even more and more and more. So it's impossible for that hadith to be false. One of the most, you can say, mutawatir hadith. Anybody want to take a guess? Don't speak without knowledge? No. Inshallah, in the environment of learning, inshallah, we can have like a little bit of flexibility. But just in general, we don't want to give fatwas or say stuff without knowledge. But you can try to think. Anyone? Okay. No, that's actually ahad. Many people don't know that because it was only narrated by Umar radiallahu anhu. No. One of the most mutawatir hadith. So we're talking in the context of speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or speaking in the religion without knowledge. So just to give you a hint. Okay. It's in Bukhari and Muslim and Musnad Imam Ahmad and others. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan filyatabahu maq'adahu fi an-nar." Whoever lies upon me intentionally, he should take his place in the hellfire. And this is one of the most mutawatir hadith. And there's other narrations with similar meaning. There's another narration where a person hears a hadith and he says it without verifying it. فَهُوَ أَهْدِ الْكَذِبَيْنِ. He's one of the two liars, the one who made it up or the one who spread it, right? So there's very strong warnings in the Quran and in the Sunnah of speaking about the deen without knowledge. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is included in this because al-wahi wahyain, al-Quran wa Sunnah, right? Revelation is two parts. The Quran, Allah's words directly, and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. As Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا يَنْتَقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. He doesn't speak of his own desires. Verily, it is just revelation that is revealed to you, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, in delivering the deen, he doesn't speak of his own opinion. He follows what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to him. So in the Quran and the Sunnah, we must stick to those texts. We can't, like we say, freestyle or make up your own opinions or answer without knowledge. Right? It's a very serious matter. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he said, "What earth will give me shelter or what sky will shade me if I should speak about the Quran with my opinion or about something I have no knowledge of?" This is Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, one of the most pious of the Sahaba and the best of the Ummah. He's saying this. He is one of the most, if not the most knowledgeable after the Prophet ﷺ in this Ummah. And he's saying that being very scared to speak of the Quran without knowledge. And he was master of the Arabic language. He was the closest companion to the Prophet ﷺ. He lived the wahi, and yet he says this statement. Umar radiallahu anhu, the second best companion after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he said, "Beware of using your opinions in religious matters. Be very careful to speak in the deen with just your opinion." And there's many narrations of different Sahaba, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, Ibn Abbas, ulama al-ummah, ulama al-sahaba, the scholars of this ummah, the scholars of the Sahaba, the best generation. They were scared to give fatwa without knowledge. There's a story that you can find in a lot of the books of fara'id. The fara'id is like the inheritance laws. So there was a person in Jahiliyyah called Amr ibn Darib al-Arwani in Mudr. He was one of the sheikhs of Jahiliyyah, basically. Like he was al-Hakim of the Qawm, the most wise of his people. And he was known to be one of the first persons in Jahiliyyah to forbid wine upon himself. he made khamr haram for himself. And he had very good generosity, and he was one of the most eloquent speakers, and he had like the highest form of poetry. His poetry was written and spread throughout the Arabian Peninsula. Anyway, the point is he was called the most knowledgeable person in that time of Jahiliyyah. Anybody that had a question that they didn't understand, they would go to him to get an answer or a solution to their problem, right? So one day, some members of a tribe came to visit him to ask him a question, and it was a very strange question for him because the first time he heard it. So they asked him about the khuntha, or the mushkil. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but mushkil is problem. Yeah, this is a problem. It's basically in fiqh, or in the kutub of faraid and inheritance laws, this is the one who has the private parts of a man and a woman. So in English, I think it's transgender or eunuch or transgender. Or hermaphrodite, right. Yeah, transgender is different. That's one's confused about their gender, I think. Or they're not sure. Hermaphrodite, I think, he got a man part and a woman part. So you guys understand the issue, inshallah. So he was asked this question, and he didn't know what to do. Like, this is the first time he ever experienced this. So he said, let me think about it, and I'll give you an answer when I can come up with a solution, right? So one day passed, 2 days passed, he still couldn't find a solution. He's racking his mind. He couldn't understand, he couldn't what to do about this problem. Each day he would slaughter for them a camel, every day. That's like giving away a Mercedes-Benz, for example. Like every day just giving one Mercedes, for that tribe in that time period. So every day he would slaughter for them a camel to feed the tribe, because that's from the Karam al-Arab. At that time they used to have generosity, and it's like aib to not, tukram dayfak. Like it's very shallow. Even in Islam it's the same thing. You're supposed to, in Islam you're not truly believing until you honor your guest. So the same thing in Jahiliyyah, right? So every day he would slaughter a camel for them. And it got to the 40th day. There was his servant girl, her name was Sukhayla. She would basically take his camels out to get water and then bring them back in the evening. She was basically like a shepherd for his camels. But she was very bad at her job. Like every time she'd go out in the morning late, so she'd miss the best spots to feed to water the camels, and she'd always come back late in the evening, so the Amr, he won't be able to get his milk from the camels, she just always got on his nerves. Every day he would complain the same thing. He would say asbahti ya Sukhayla, you just got up now, or you just came back now, always, every day. So the 40th day, she came to him and she said, what's the problem? You're slaughtering all these camels. We're not have no camels left. What's the problem? Tell me. And he's like, what do you know? You're just like a servant girl. You don't know anything. Get out of here. And she said, just tell me, please. And she kept insisting. And he said, okay. This tribe came and they have this problem of, al-khuntha. She said, اتبعوا المال اتبعوا المال المآل. Take where the water flows from, that's what the person is, basically. That's the ruling he should get in the inheritance laws. If it comes out from the private part of the male private part, he should get inheritance laws according to the male. And if it comes out from the female private part, he should get inheritance laws applicable to the female, right? Or she should get it according to the hadith, or this statement. And then Islam actually accepted this ruling, and it's also a part of the Islamic law. So he was so happy. He said, I won't complain about you anymore, ya Sukhayla. He was just, alhamdulillah, 40 camels is a lot, mashallah. But he was more happy just to have the knowledge and to be able to answer the question and to help the people, right? So my point of this story is, this person is from Jahiliyyah, right? And Imam al-Awza'i, rahimahullah, he made a comment upon this story saying that, look at this man from Jahiliyyah. He doesn't fear Allah, he doesn't know about Jannah or Nar, and yet he waited 40 days to answer a question at his expense. Some of us, mashallah, we get a deep question and right away answer it, It's in Bukhari, yeah, it's this. No. Look at this man in Jahiliyyah, he didn't answer it. for 40 days till he came up with the right answer. It's called ihtiram al-ilm, right? Even just having respect of knowledge in the dunya is an honorable concept. To not say everything that you know, or to not say something you don't know. That's honorable, right? If you speak everything that comes into your mind, it's considered crazy amongst the scholars, right? So especially in the deen, when you talk about the deen, you should be very careful of what you say. Ibn Abi Layla, rahimahullah, he was one of the famous tabi'een scholars of Islam. He said, أدركت 170 من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. I met 170 companions of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. And every single one of them wished that his companion or another person would answer the question. In the Prophet's mosques, they were so scared to answer the question. 170, they'd always, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to answer this. Can you please go ask this person, right? Nowadays, subhanAllah, people are like, come ask me a question. I got the answer. Just come on. Shuf al-wara'. Look at the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala these people have. It's an amana. They were scared to answer questions because it's a mas'uliyah. On the day of judgment, you'll be asked what you said. Did you say something from the book of Allah, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the proper understanding? Did you see the explanation of the scholars? Or did you just give someone wrong information and make him misguided? It's reported about Imam Malik, rahimahullah, the great Imam, who a whole madhab came after him, right? He said, one narration, he was asked 42 questions, and he only answered 5 out of the 42. Right? And he was humble about it. Nowadays, people are like, what kind of sheikh is he? He can only answer 5 out of 42. This was Imam Malik, like one of the 4 madhab of Islam. His book Al-Muwatta was is the most sahih book, before Bukhari and Muslim came about. And it's one of the only books that got passed down from his time period. There was many muwatta'at in his time, and even one of his students said, look at all these books around, and he said, the one that's sincere for Allah will last. And subhanAllah, like Allah knows best, but that's one of the only books that lasted from his time period. And it's still read today, and it's one of the best books of fiqh and hadith. So he answered only 5 out of 42 questions. In another narration, a man came all the way from Andalus to ask him important questions. Andalus was Spain at that time. It's not like us, we can get in a plane and just take off, in 2 hours we're in another country or whatever. No, they had to come through very harsh travel in the boats, through the deserts, on animals. Journey was like a real suffering back then, right? So this man came all the way to Imam Malik to ask him questions from Andalus. And he went and asked him, such and such. And Imam Malik said, I'm not sure, come back tomorrow. So he came back the next day. And he asked, he came back like ready to go. His camel was packed. And he's like, I'm going to get the answer and go right back to my people and tell them. So he came ready. And he asked Imam Malik, what's the answer? He said, I'm sorry, I couldn't get the answer for this question. And he said, I came from Andalus. And they said that you're the most knowledgeable person in the earth. What should I tell them? He said, tell them Imam Malik doesn't know. This is the humbleness of the ulama. The fear to answer about something of the deen without knowledge. Another narration about Imam Malik. I'm particular to Malik because my parents are from the Maghrib al-Arabi, so I like that Imam a lot. I like all the Imams, alhamdulillah, I love them all. But this story also was on Imam Malik. It's reported that one of his students asked a question, or he heard Imam Malik being asked a question, and after, Imam Malik said, I don't know, I don't want to answer that. So he said, to the shaykh afterwards, هذه مسألة خفيفة. This is like an easy question. It's a light. Khafif means light. And Imam Malik got very, very upset. And he said, in the deen of Islam, there's no light question. There's no light knowledge. Didn't you hear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, إِنَّا سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. Don't you hear Allah said that we will reveal to you a heavy weight, a heavy weighted word? All the deen is heavy. There's no easy questions. This is a light issue. When you're answering upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a serious affair. Sheikh, even the one that we're talking to about right now, his book, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, he was one of the most knowledgeable scholars of his time, right? Even Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, he said, يعني ما رأيت في الدنيا عابد منه. I didn't see anybody in the world that was more of a worshipper than him. In other narrations by Ibn Kathir and others who were his students, they said, I didn't see anybody more knowledgeable than him, Ibn Qayyim. But he would say, أنا قليل البضاعة, when he got asked questions like, I don't have much, I'm sorry, I'm weak, I don't have much knowledge. This Imam, he wrote Zad al-Ma'ad, which is one of the greatest books in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. He wrote it on his journey to Mecca, with no library, no notebooks, no nothing, just his mind. And this is one of the best books of seerah that's around. And he says about himself, I don't have much knowledge, I'm weak, forgive me. This is the scholars of Islam, the humbleness, right? This is the humbleness that we should try to emulate. Finally, from our time period, there's Muhammad, not from ours, but he died in the modern century, you can say, Muhammad Amin al-Shanqiti, rahimahullah. He wrote Adwa al-Bayan, one of the great books of tafsir, and he has many other books. He's from Shanqit, from Mauritania originally, and it said that he's memorized maybe hundreds of books, not just read, but memorized hundreds of books. He knows all of the fiqh, masail, the hadith books, the ayat in the Quran. But when he's asked questions, if he doesn't have an ayat or hadith to support his statement, he won't answer. From wara', from having fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Abdul Barr, rahimahullah, one of the great scholars and muhaddiths, said that no one answers every question posed to him except that he's majnoon, crazy. So this is the methodology of our predecessors and our scholars. This is the lesson, the first lesson that this hadith we can derive from is to respect the knowledge, right? Don't speak about stuff you have no knowledge of. I've seen so many times like people trying to quote hadith, they don't even know Arabic language. They don't know it's nasikh or mansukh, right? Oh, it's in Bukhari. Okay, like you're Shaykh al-Islam now because you read a hadith in Bukhari, right? No other scholar read the hadith of Bukhari before you. If you read the explanation of the hadith, no, it's clear, it doesn't need explanation. No. Imam Bukhari wrote this for knowledgeable people. There is explanation for it. Some hadith are mansukh, some hadith are abrogated, right? Some hadith are put into other context. Right? I feel, or I think, or it's my opinion. Who are we? And may Allah forgive me and forgive us all. We got to be very careful when we talk about the deen. It's a amana, it's a trust, So this is the first part, the warning of speaking without knowledge. Inshallah, maybe the next one I'll talk about the importance of, who you seek knowledge from, because the correct way they should have been to ask those who are more knowledgeable, who are able to answer the question. They should have said, Allah knows best, or I don't know, and go to someone who knows to answer the question, which is the Prophet ﷺ. Right? And maybe we'll talk about how to seek knowledge, or some of the steps in seeking knowledge. If you'd like, we can pause here, and if there's any questions or comments or nasiha, tafaddal. So a lot of them started when they were young, like the Ibn Qayyim that we're talking about. We mentioned last time that he started seeking knowledge at the age of 6. He memorized the Quran by the age of 9. So it's always encouraged for us to start when you're young, and to encourage our siblings or our offspring, all of them to start when they're young. It's not to say that's the only reason, because there was many imams and many scholars who started when they were much older. Inshallah, I might talk about that when we get into it later. But the main thing is they dedicated their time and they were consistent. Like if you put it in your mind that it's ilm, there's two types, like kasbi and wahbi. So it can be attained by anybody, or something that's just given as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ يُعَلِّمَكُمُ اللَّهُ. Fear Allah and Allah will give you knowledge, right? And the other ilm is kasbi. So the more you try and apply yourself, you can attain it too. Like the shanaqita, the ones that we were talking about too, they have a methodology for the Quran. They memorize a page a day, for example, or they have the lawha, they write it on the lawha, and they repeat it 500 times each day, right? For each thing that they're memorizing. You don't have to do that much, but you can train your mind. The more that you memorize, the easier it becomes. But they basically started young, and they continue to memorize, and they dedicate their time. It's like any muscle. The more you work it out, the stronger it becomes. And in tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making dua to Allah, be sincere, that Allah blesses your knowledge and blesses your memorization. These are all steps that they took. And it was Allah, you could see the blessings in them, because it comes to us. So, but any of us can, inshallah, if you're sincere enough and you apply yourself enough, you can attain that type of knowledge and that type of memorization if you get the tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I advise other people, like some people, they always make it like I got to memorize this whole book. No, start with the ayah, for example, or 2 ayahs. Just make it consistent. If you do it every single day, that's 360 whatever ayats per year. That's at least you finish Surah Al-Baqarah in 1 year, right? If you're more, you have a start. And you'll find too, when you start being consistent in doing that, it becomes easier to get more. So like for the first month or two, maybe 1 ayah, then you're going to see it's so easy for you can do 2 or 3 ayah. Then you can do half a page maybe, then you can do a whole page maybe. So it's just consistency and dua and being sincere to Allah. So for the first question, are we a nation, or is Islam or Muslims like a nation of memorization? And I would say yes. The tradition started, many of the Sahaba didn't know how to read or write, but they memorized. And that was the tradition of the Arabs before them too. They memorize poetry, for example, where one person can stand up in the souq and recite from morning until evening without repeating one word twice. Or there's many narrations about like the gift of memorization for the Muslims. And this tradition is carried down, like especially it's lost in some of the other parts of the Muslim world, but it's still really strong in the Maghrib al-Arab, in Mauritania and Morocco and even other parts like that. There's still some obvious, all over the ummah, because people memorize the Quran, and that's how it's sent down to us, generation upon generation. So we are a ummah of hifth. And then a lot of scholars say, al-ilmu fi al-ra'si wa laysa fi al-kurras, that knowledge is in the head, but not in the books. Al-ilmu ma'i haythu ma kunt, knowledge is with me wherever I go. There's a story about Imam al-Ghazali, I think, rahimahullah. He had his books with him, and he was attacked by bandits, and they wanted to rob the caravan that he was in. He said, please take whatever you want, but just don't take my books. And they were like, get out of my way. And they took his books. And he was so sad. But from that point, he dedicated himself. He said, whatever knowledge I take, I'm not going to let a thief be able to steal it from me again. Which means he's going to keep it in his mind and in his heart. Allah says even in the Quran that the knowledge is in their hearts, right? Talking about the book of Allah. So it is very highly encouraged to memorize in our deen, and that's the true knowledge. And even more important is to have the understanding as well, so you combine hifth ma'al ilm wal amal, so knowledge, memorization of knowledge and action. The second point, it depends on what you mean by having discussions. Like, are you debating like a religious matter, or are you trying to study and find a solution, or? So the gray areas I would advise not delving into, because the Prophet ﷺ, first of all, he said that I guarantee you a place in Jannah if you leave a debate or argument for the sake of Allah, right? So sometimes people get into these debates and they really don't have no knowledge that they should be talking about these issues, and they start getting like heated debates, and this is not good, right? The whole part of this first part of the lecture we were talking about is not speaking without knowledge. So you want to be very careful to jump into matters that you don't have knowledge of and saying something that might be outside the folds of Islam, for example. You want to be careful. So I would advise asking a person of knowledge about the question, right? Researching the question instead of debating it. Spend your time in learning as opposed to discussing, because the more knowledge you have, the more it will benefit you. Right, and you'll know the right answer, as opposed to just giving everybody's opinion. If they're not qualified to give their opinions, then it's better not to. And Allah knows best. Is that sufficient, or?
Yeah, and one more question.
I'll be like Imam Malik and say, hey, Allahu Alam, I don't know. Inshallah, I mean, if it's like from scholars or it's like religious, approved by the scholars and stuff, inshallah. Yeah. And see, there's also like a manhaj and seeking knowledge that started from the first generation all the way up to our time. The scholars have put a nice curriculum or a way to seek knowledge and understanding. Many scholars will say that, like, you can't sit in my halaqah until you memorize the Quran, because that's the asas of knowledge, the book of Allah, right? That's the foundation of knowledge, right? I'm not saying that applies to everybody, but I'm just saying that they've put like a curriculum. If you want to become a student of knowledge, or if you want to seek knowledge, it's there for you. And if you really have that intention, inshallah, I would advise you to go that route. If you just want to be, like a regular person, and you ask those who have knowledge or the ability to give you the right answer, it's like the blind leading the blind. If you both don't have knowledge and you're debating an issue and trying to argue about something you both have no knowledge about, and it's dangerous and it's a waste of time. You could have spent that time memorizing Quran or Hadith, or fiqh rulings and stuff like that, Okay, alhamdulillah. So inshallah, the next meeting we'll have, I'll try to make it into 2 parts. If we can, I'll try to do some of the requirements of knowledge, explain the second part or the other part of the Hadith, and then we'll probably move into the shifa of the Quran, the healing of the Quran, and how the Quran is a shifa for believers and non-believers. Before the class, like I was saying, some people who were interested, if we wanted to come before and memorize a hadith or 2, like related to the subject that we're going through, just so it's something that you can take with you, like we were saying, الحفظ في الرأس وليس في الكراس, or العلم في الرأس وليس في الكراس, that knowledge is in the mind and the heart, not just in the books. So if we could take something each week, I thought that would be beneficial. Inshallah, like I said, next time I'm going to make it into 2 sessions, probably, because I might be away for a little while. And then in the future, inshallah, we can make I'm going to sit with Brother Muhammad, and we'll try to brainstorm to make like a nice curriculum or a program so we can have more regular sessions, inshallah. So we can do a hadith or 2 right now, the ones that we first started with. I'll just take like a part of the hadith so it's easy to memorize, and then we'll try to memorize it together, okay? Okay. ما أنزل الله داء إلا أنزل الله له شفاء. Okay, you can repeat. ما أنزل الله داء إلا أنزل الله له شفاء. Okay. Allah has not sent down a sickness except that He sent for it its cure. That's the one hadith. And you guys want to take one more, or? You guys want to stick with that one, or do you want to get one more? That's good. All right. ما أنزل الله داء إلا أنزل الله له شفاء. And that's in Sahih al-Bukhari, so you guys know where it's from, inshallah. Okay. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه الغفور الرحيم. Inshallah, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us of those who are knowledgeable. Allahumma alimna bima yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. Oh Allah, teach us that which is beneficial for us, and let's apply it, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.